Suzanne, wake up, come and help me clean the meat and dig up some potatoes from the yard. And Susan was like, oh no, not again. Another day of no college. She hated missing college. Why is college so important to her? Let's continue the story and find out. So Susan is a college-going student. In this lesson, we're going to find out how she finally made her way to college in a society where people felt that education, learning, and achieving their goal was not that important for a girl. Now the story, Sunshine Susan by Deepa Kiran, is a favorite of so many is because it is very relatable to people like us who are from patriarchal society, and in a society where man is believed to be the supreme gender. Even in our society, though of late this attitude of dominating women or dominating the female gender is starting to decrease. But still we are wired with the mentality that as women, girls are inferior to men, and it still continues to be a debatable issue. Susan lives with her parents, her grandmother, her elder brother Sandy. They lived in a beautiful house built by her grandfather beside a river in a village called Sabato. Grandmother was old, so she could not help with the chores in the house, so Susan had to help her mother around and do all the chores, and she did not complain. She loved doing everything except for cooking. She did not like cooking. She loved to eat but did not like cooking much. Sounds so much like me. Her father was a beekeeper, and once every fortnight he would double up as a salesperson and go out to the market to sell the honey. So when father had to go to the market early in the morning to sell the honey, Susan had to stay back home and cook meal for father and his friends to come and eat after returning from the market. Why can't I come with you, Daddy? Why can't Sandy stay and help instead? She would ask every time. She had the zeal, she had the excitement to go out and help her father. But Daddy always chose Sandy. Oh, I've told you so many times. It's not a girl's job. Susan would tell her father that she is old enough. She was going to turn 17 soon. Aren't you proud of being a beekeeper? Aren't you enjoying it? Daddy, please let me come along. But Daddy would just say, we'll see next time. And would live with a smug Sandy, leaving Susan to stay back home and help mother. Too bad it's a guy thing. Dainty damsel. Sandy would laugh and follow his father to the gate. Now Susan hated to be called a dainty damsel, you know. Susan hated to be called dainty. Dainty means fragile, soft, and unable to do tough works, which Susan was not going to take. She threw a broken branch towards him. Sandy was aware that Susan was going to do something like that, so he ducked and then ran away laughing and teasing Susan. Here, something that I need you to know is that when the elder generation's mentality is passed on to the next generation, and then the next generation will pass on that same mentality to the next, and that is how our patriarchal society has formed. The writer Deepa Kiran has in a very light way shown us how our parents' attitude have an impact on us, how our parents' mentality get wired in our brain. Now in the next paragraph, the thing that you need to remember is the explanation of physicality of Susan. So what kind of a girl do you imagine Susan would be? Susan was strong and fit, obviously. She was of average height and full of energy. Her friends called her Rocket because of the fact that she's always filled with energy. She would run to the hill and come back, even on those days when she had college. She loved going to college. She loved learning. We don't have money to educate you anymore, her parents told her. And that was the saddest news for her, because she wanted to go higher and higher in life, achieve more and more, learn more and more. She was someone who would want to live life to the fullest. And the fact that her parents could not afford to educate her was probably a very sad news. She did not belong to a very rich family. They were hardly making both ends meet. But then, to think of it, her parents were right. They did not have enough money to educate them both. I need to study. I have to go to the college. I really want to become something in my life. Please. Susan told her friend, the November 3. The November 3 was her friend. It was a huge tree that overlooked her window with wide blossoms, and during autumn it would shed all its leaves and would be covered with white blossoms all over. We've all seen that kind of trees, and we've all been surprised by the beauty of those kind of trees. How they shed all their leaves and it would be filled with blossoms. Susan too was spellbound. It was a fateful one, because it was not like any other friend who would spill her secrets. The November 3 would never laugh at her dreams. The November 3 always silently listened to whatever Susan had to say, and sometimes even responded, like the time when she talked about how she wanted to become someone, how she wanted to do something and do it fast, how she wanted to go for learning and did not know how to go about. The November 3 gave her an idea. Suddenly, as she was sitting there thinking how to go about, a blossom fell on her lap. With that falling of that blossom, suddenly a brainwave struck her mind. And then she got an idea and then she gave that November 3 a hug, saying thank you, and then ran off to her father to the farm. She was planning to become a beekeeper. I want to do beekeeping. I will work for 2 hours daily, and with the wages, I'll pay for my fees. Daddy, please let me be a beekeeper. Please help me to go to college. Like usual, Daddy said, we'll see next time. Now go back home. Don't make a scene here. Don't make a drama here. I am at work. And he chased off Susan. Mrs. Andrew, the wife of the owner, noticed the duo talking over something. And after coming to know what Susan wanted and what her father thought, it's wonderful to know that your daughter wishes to work here and finance her own education. You must be very proud of her. On one hand, beekeeping is a tough job, and on the other hand, education is one of the best gifts of life. Your daughter is smart, brave, and a very determined girl. Why do you stop her? And Susan's father was about to say something, but Mrs. Andrew just brushed it off. She turned to Susan and said, "You must go to college. You are now an employee of this bee farm. You can join from tomorrow." Susan's father, Mrs. Andrew, told him that, "Teach your daughter well. You are a very lucky person to have a daughter who is driven by such passion." She advised Susan that, okay, now beekeeping is a tough job. You need to be very persistent and regular, and you will learn. Susan was so excited, she nodded at Mrs. Andrew and then ran off. And out of excitement, she could not even thank Mrs. Andrews. Susan was lucky she met someone like Mrs. Andrews who understood her and helped her out. It was just a small part for Mrs. Andrews, but it did make a big impact in Susan's life to achieve her dreams. If it was not for Mrs. Andrews, Susan's father would have never listened to her, saying that it was a tough job, saying that we'll talk about it. Beekeeping was indeed a tough job. Firstly, there's always this danger of getting stung by the bees. Her father told her that she needed to wear a hat with a circular net around the head. Study your bees. Watch them and understand them. Susan listened to her father's teaching carefully and replayed it in her head. Study your bees, watch them, understand them. 1 month of hard work later, Susan returned home with her first salary. With her salary, she got a small bottle of honey labeled with a square piece of paper on which it was written, "Sunshine." Sunshine honey, Grandma. The best brand of honey ever. Grandma swelled with pride. She was so happy that Susan was passionate about what she was doing, and when she presented her with the honey, she took a spoonful of the special honey brought by Susan. A toothless smile beamed on her face as she announced that, "Wonderful! I am so proud of you." And then she called the others to come and taste that. "You must taste this honey. It's so good." See how supportive Grandma was? These small things, like what Mrs. Andrews did and what Grandma said or Grandma encouraged her to do, these are the small things that kept the passion of Susan burning. The whole family agreed that yes, the honey was special, and the special ingredient, what made it so special, was that there was the hard labor of Susan, and it was the fruit of her labor, so obviously it was tasty and special. She was a hard-working girl, so within no time she had her own bee farm. She started her own bee farm, from where she started selling honey to the villagers, and she called it Sunshine Honey. She was working so hard between bee farm and education that on days like this, when she had to stay back home and help her mother, it saddened her because she was going to miss college. Girls have to stay home and keep the family together. Of what use is all this learning? Better get used to being home. Wonder why your parents are still educating you. If she could, she would run away from all these comments, but she could not. So she gave them the best response. She said nothing at all. She completely ignored these naysayers. When people said stuff that would bring her spirits down, when people said stuff that would discourage her, she completely ignored them. That was the best response she could give. When she heard all these discouragements, she always remembered her grandma's story. You know, grandmother had a stock of stories, never-ending stories. But one of the stories that Susan loved the most was the story of the frogs that raised up the castle. Ever heard about frogs raising up the castle? The people who were looking, the people who were witnessing the frogs who were running up the castle talked. Some frogs raised up a castle. And the onlookers and the people who were looking at the frogs were talking about them, saying, have you ever heard about frogs raising up a castle? People were talking about them. But the frogs simply decided to go about it, simply decided to race. They kept hopping and hopping and hopping up the castle, and the going got tougher and tougher as it got higher and higher. Come back, return to safety. You'll break your legs. The frogs could hear them. And when the frogs heard them saying that it was going to be tough, they started to get scared. They were afraid that they might get hurt. They might break their leg. So one by one, the frogs started to give up. All but one. One single frog continued to hop higher and higher and higher until it reached the top. He did it. You know what? When you are trying to achieve something, there are people who surround you, who laugh at you, who mock at your dreams, who tell you that it is not going to be easy. People tell you that it's not possible. You don't have the capacity. You will fall. You won't make it. Some say because they truly care. Some others say because they don't believe in you. But in the end, nobody knows you better than yourself. So finally, when the frog reached its goal, everyone applauded him. Everyone said, you did it. Yeah, we knew you could do it. Yeah, we knew you could do it. It's in honor of his achievement of doing the impossible. A bird flew up and carried it down. People started to congratulate it. Congratulations, you must share with us the secret of not giving up despite of all the warnings from the people down below. He was deaf. He had not heard a single word of discouragement. So remember, do not listen to, and Susan would say, the words of those who try to bring you down. She didn't listen to people when they tried to laugh at her for trying to ride a motorbike. Another sort of encouragement. Mrs. Andrew helped Susan in a little way. Grandma encouraged her in a similar other way. And her family, though they were a little bit hesitant, they still encouraged Susan to reach her dreams, and her uncle, who presented her with a motorbike, also encouraged Susan to a certain degree. The point that Deepa Kiran makes here in her story is that there are some men like her uncle who are willing to encourage girls to achieve their dream. So as you progress with the story, you should also understand the meaning, the deeper message that the author tries to convey. It was not easy for her to learn how to ride a bike. She would fall, and then Sandy, along with his friends, were having fun at the expense of Susan's practice. And you know, when you're trying to do something and there are people around you watching you and mocking at your mistakes, it can be very embarrassing. But Susan put up a brave face and continued to practice anyhow. Finally, it was going to be a remarkable day that Susan would shut the naysayers' mouth once and for all. Her mother was working in the garden when suddenly she got bitten by a snake. When her mother screamed, Susan ran out just in time to see the snake slithering away. Now the nearest hospital was 6 kilometers away, and the bus was gone for the day. Father and Sandy were also not at home. So now Susan had to do something. What was she going to do? Grandmother came out and was wailing, "Oh Lord, do something." But what could she do? What could she possibly do? Stop being scared and think. What could you do? She told herself. She finally got a tourniquet and wrapped it around the ankle where mother was bitten. Took a thick rope, and with a little help from grandmother, she tied her mother to herself on her bike and rode her to the hospital. And that was how she saved her mother. At the hospital, they give mother an anti-venomous injection. "Sunshine girl," everyone said with a smile. That day she understood where her shine came from. Her shine came from her courage to believe in herself and to follow her heart. Finally, regarding any lesson that you find difficulty in understanding, do WhatsApp me like you do, or write it in the comment section below. I'll try my best to cover it up for you. Do not forget to make a note of all the important things that I mentioned, or the displays that I make. All the best, and see you in the next video.